significant. Nobody was hurt. But this was an active threat, another one, in the United States Capitol. And it comes just 2 weeks after the Department of Homeland Security sent an alert to law enforcement agencies all over the country, warning of an increased threat of politically motivated violence this month, specifically tied to rampant pro-Trump conspiracy theories around the election and this fantasy among pro-Trump extremists that former President Trump will somehow be reinstated as president this month. And that is part of what this guy was ranting and raving about today when he was threatening that he could blow up 2.5 square blocks of Washington, D.C. Is this the kind of violence we were warned about? And should we see this as linked to broader threats? Or should we see these things as random, sad lunatics who should be treated as individuals and not as part of some larger ideologically motivated thing? Joining us now is Ben Collins. He's a senior reporter for NBC News. He specifically covers disinformation and extremism, which means Ben's daily beat is pretty dark. But Ben, this was a different kind of dark. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
I specifically wanted to talk to you tonight because when we started, when this ended today, when we knew it wasn't going to be a bomb story, it was going to be a bomb threat story, and we started to learn more about what this guy was apparently motivated by, I found myself wanting to ask you if it's a good idea to report on what motivated this guy, whether we should report on what was in his live stream, whether we should report on what he thought he was doing, or whether that has the potential to make this worse.
It's a double-edged sword. I think, posting all 5 or 6 Facebook Live videos that he streamed that were just ramblings for a lot of the time, I think that's kind of useless. I don't think that really helps anybody. But I do think there is something here. This guy was complaining. The one through line was that, his life was in shambles because he didn't have health care and that his wife needed a surgery and could not get it. And then by the time she got it, it seemed to disfigure her in some way. And he was still paying for it. And then, at the end of that, you would think like, hey, this guy should care about health care, right? He cares about health care, right? Whatever. But that's not what happened. In the very next sentence, he said, now we see all of these Afghan immigrants. We call them illegal immigrants from Mexico and Afghanistan. And they're going to get the free stuff that we don't have, free healthcare. And what I realized is this is just going to keep happening. There is this sort of fascist authoritarian element that pinpoints immigrants as the cause of all these problems. This is not a new concept, but the idea that as things get worse and worse and erode due to the pandemic or climate change, this is just going to keep happening. The problems are not going to get solved, but they're going to be pinned on people who are not from this country.
Do you think that this was this a modern event in the sense that do you think that this is, like you say, these are not new tropes, these ideas of scapegoating immigrants and blaming the other, particularly the other of another color, for what is definitely a homegrown problem and putting the anxiety on the external rather than on the internal? Those aren't new ideas, but the way that he was talking about his grievances, I'm thinking about the DHS threat to alert to law enforcement agencies a couple of weeks ago. The theory behind that is that there's something more virulent and more potentially motivating to people who are inclined to commit political violence, to have stuff like this channeled through disinformation channels, through social media, and through extremist media in a way that sort of validates and encourages people who think this way.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the forums that were there before January 6th that were posting all this stuff, they're still around. They're still posting crazy stuff. In fact, there was, I would say, like a 5 or 6 month cooling off period where people didn't really know if they were being watched by the feds. They didn't know how explicitly to talk about stuff. But in the last couple of weeks, as first of all, they realized, these people in these forums realized that Donald Trump is not going to be the president again anytime soon. And second of all of these audits they are not this cut and dry case of election fraud that they thought it was. In fact, it's probably a sham. That's what they're starting to realize, that, people have to, I guess, take up arms. That's what they keep saying in this space. Like, when are you going to do something? That's what everyone keeps saying in these spaces. I guess the difference is there's no date. January 6th, there was this 2-week lead up. It was like a WrestleMania for these people. They were just waiting to go. Now everyone's just like, where do we go? What do we do? And that's how you get lone wolf terror. I do want to say really quickly, there were 2 QAnon terror attacks last week. There were, a guy killed his kids and ascribed it to QAnon. And there was the largest mass shooting in the UK in decades. And that guy was an incel Trump supporter who believed himself to be an American at heart. And he viewed that to be like gun toting and believing in QAnon. And there's this idea that the government is filled with pedophiles or something. So lone wolf terror is something to be worried about here, in part because there is no organizing event that these people can meet up. And, maybe those things would diffuse these things, but if they're lone wolves, they can do it themselves.